But on the following day, Peter arose early and called us, and we went together to the secret place in which we had been on the previous day, for the purpose of prayer. And when, after prayer, we were coming thence to the appointed place, he exhorted us by the way, saying,
Hear me, most beloved fellow servants. It is good that every one of you, according to his ability, contribute to the advantage of those who are approaching to the faith of our religion, and therefore do not shrink from instructing the ignorant and teaching according to the wisdom which has been bestowed upon you by the providence of God, yet so that you only join the eloquence of your discourse with those things which you have heard from me and which have been committed to you, but do not speak anything which is your own and which has not been committed to you, though it may seem to yourselves to be true, but hold forth those things, as I have said, which I myself have received from the true prophet, and have delivered to you, although they may seem to be less full of authority. For thus it often happens that men turn away from the truth, while they believe that they have found out by their own thoughts a form of truth more true and powerful.
To these counsels of Peter we willingly assented, saying to him that we should do nothing but what was pleasing to him. Then said he,
That you may therefore be exercised without danger, each of you conduct the discussion in my presence, one succeeding another, and each one elucidating his own questions. Now then, as Niceta discoursed sufficiently yesterday, let Aquila conduct the discussion today, and after Aquila, Clement. And then I, if the case shall require it, will add something.
Meantime, while we were talking in this way, we came to the house, and the master of the house welcomed us and led us to a certain apartment, arranged after the manner of a theatre and beautifully built. There we found great crowds waiting for us, who had come during the night, and among them the old man who had argued with us yesterday. Therefore we entered, having Peter in the midst of us, looking about if we could see the old man anywhere. And when Peter saw him hiding in the midst of the crowd, he called him to him, saying,
Since you possess a soul more enlightened than most, why do you hide yourself and conceal yourself in modesty? Rather come hither and propound your sentiments.
When Peter had thus spoken, immediately the crowd began to make room for the old man. And when he had come forward, he thus began.
Although I do not remember the words of the discourse which the young man delivered yesterday, yet I recollect the purport and the order of it. And therefore I think it necessary, for the sake of those who were not present yesterday, to call up what was said and to repeat everything shortly, that, although something may have escaped me, I may be reminded of it by him who delivered the discourse, who is now present. This, then, was the purport of yesterday's discussion, that all things that we see, inasmuch as they consist in a certain proportion, and art and form and species, must be believed to have been made by intelligent power. But if it be mind and reason that has formed them, it follows that the world is governed by the providence of the same reason, although the things which are done in the world may seem to us to be not quite rightly done. But it follows that if God and mind is the creator of all things, he must also be just. But if he is just, he necessarily judges. If he judges, it is of necessity that men be judged with respect to their doings. And if everyone is judged in respect of his doings, there shall at some time be a righteous separation between righteous men and sinners. This, I think, was the substance of the whole discourse. If, therefore, it can be shown that mind and reason created all things, it follows that those things which come after are also managed by reason and providence. But if unintelligent and blind nature produces all things, the reason of judgment is undoubtedly overthrown, and there is no ground to expect either punishment of sin or reward of well-doing, where there is no judge. Since then the whole matter depends upon this, and hangs by this head. Do not take it amiss, if I wish this to be discussed and handled somewhat more fully. For in this, the first gate, as it were, is shut towards all things which are propounded, and therefore I wish first of all to have it opened to me. Now therefore hear what my doctrine is, and if any one of you pleases, let him reply to me. For I shall not be ashamed to learn if I hear that which is true, and to assent to him who speaks rightly. The discourse, then, which you delivered yesterday, which asserted that all things consist by art and measure and reason, does not fully persuade me that it is mind and reason that has made the world, for I have many things which I can show to consist by competent measure and form and species, and which yet were not made by mind and reason. Then, besides, I see that many things are done in the world without arrangement, consequence, or justice, and that nothing can be done without the course of Genesis. This I shall in the sequel prove most clearly from my own case.
When the old man had thus spoken, Aquila answered,
As you yourself propose that anyone who pleased should have an opportunity of answering to what you might say, my brother Niceta permits me to conduct the argument today.
Go on, my son, as you please.
You promised that you would show that there are many things in the world which have a form and species arranged by equal reason, which yet, it is evident, were not affected by God as their creator. Now then, as you have promised, point out these things.
Behold, we see the bow in the heaven assume a circular shape, completed in all proportion, and have an appearance of reality, which perhaps neither mind could have constructed, nor reason described, and yet it is not made by any mind. Behold, I have set forth the whole in a word. Now answer me.
If anything is expressed from a type and form, it is at once understood that it is from reason, and that it could not be made without mind, since the type itself, which expresses figures and forms, was not made without mind. For example, if wax be applied to an engraved ring, it takes the stamp and figure from the ring, which undoubtedly is without sense, but then the ring which expresses the figure was engraved by the hand of a workman, and it was mind and reason that gave the type to the ring. So then the bow also is expressed in the air. For the sun, impressing its rays on the clouds in the process of rarefaction, and affixing the type of its circularity to the cloudy moisture, as it were to soft wax, produces the appearance of a bow, and this, as I have said, is effected by the reflection of the sun's brightness upon the clouds, and reproducing the brightness of its circle from them. Now this does not always take place, but only when the opportunity is presented by the rarefaction of moistened clouds, and consequently, when the clouds again are condensed and unite, the form of the bow is dissolved and vanishes. Finally, the bow never is seen without sun and clouds, just as the image is not produced unless there be the type and wax or some other material. Nor is it wonderful if God the Creator in the beginning made types from which forms and species may now be expressed. But this is similar to that in the beginning God created insensible elements which he might use for forming and developing all other things. But even those who form statues first make a mold of clay or wax, and from it the figure of the statue is produced, and then afterwards a shadow is also produced from the statue, which shadow always bears the form and likeness of the statue. What shall we say then? That the insensible statue forms a shadow finished with as diligent care as the statue itself? Or shall the finishing of the shadow be unhesitatingly ascribed to him who has also fashioned the statue? If then it seems to you that this is so, and what has been said on this subject is enough, let us come to inquire into other matters. Or if you think that something is still wanting, let us go over it again.
I wish you would go over this again, since there are many other things which I see to be made in like manner. For both the fruits of trees are produced in like manner, beautifully formed and wonderfully rounded, and the appearance of the leaves is formed with immense gracefulness, and the green membrane is woven with exquisite art. Then, moreover, fleas, mice, lizards, and such like, shall we say that these are made by God? Hence, from these vile objects, a conjecture is derived concerning the superior that they are by no means formed by the art of mind.
You infer well concerning the texture of leaves and concerning small animals, that from these belief is withdrawn from the superior creatures. But let not these things deceive you, that you should think that God, working as it were only with two hands, could not complete all things that are made. But remember how my brother Niceta answered you yesterday and truly disclosed the mystery before the time, as a son speaking with his father, and explained why and how things are made which seem to be useless.
I should like to hear from you why those useless things are made by the will of that supreme mind.
If it is fully manifest to you that there is in them the work of mind and reason, then you will not hesitate to say also why they were made, and to declare that they have been rightly made.
I am not able, my son, to say that those things which seem formed by art are made by mind, by reason of other things which we see to be done unjustly and disorderly in the world.
If those things which are done disorderly do not allow you say that they are done by the providence of God, why do not those things which are done orderly compel you to say that they are done by God, and that irrational nature cannot produce a rational work? For it is certain, nor do we at all deny, that in this world some things are done orderly and some disorderly. Those things, therefore, that are done rationally believe that they are done by providence, but those that are done irrationally and inordinately, that they befall naturally and happen accidentally. But I wonder that men do not perceive that where there is sense, things may be done ordinately and inordinately, but where there is no sense, neither the one nor the other can be done. For reason makes order, and the course of order necessarily produces something inordinate, if anything contrary happen to disturb order.
This very thing I wish you to show me.
I shall do so without delay. 2 visible signs are shown in heaven, one of the sun, the other of the moon, and these are followed by 5 other stars, each describing its own separate orbit. These, therefore, God has placed in the heaven, by which the temperature of the air may be regulated according to the seasons, and the order of vicissitudes and alternations may be kept. But by means of the very same signs, if at any time plague and corruption is sent upon the earth for the sins of men, the air is disturbed, pestilence is brought upon animals, blight upon crops, and a destructive year in every way upon men. And thus it is that by one and the same means order is both kept and destroyed. For it is manifest even to the unbelieving and unskilful that the course of the sun, which is useful and necessary to the world, and which is assigned by providence, is always kept orderly. But the courses of the moon, in comparison of the course of the sun, seem to the unskilful to be inordinate and unsettled in her waxing and waning. For the sun moves in fixed and orderly periods, for from him are hours, from him the day when he rises, from him also the night when he sets. From him months and years are reckoned, from him the variations of seasons are produced. While rising to the higher regions, he tempers the spring. But when he reaches the top of the heaven, he kindles the summer's heats. Again, sinking, he produces the temper of autumn, and when he returns to his lowest circle, he bequeaths to us the rigor of winter's cold from the icy binding of heaven. But we shall discourse at greater length on these subjects at another time. Now, meantime, we remark that though he is that good servant for regulating the changes of the seasons, yet, when chastisement is inflicted upon men according to the will of God, he glows more fiercely and burns up the world with more vehement fires. In like manner also the course of the moon, and that changing which seems to the unskilful to be disorderly, is adapted to the growth of crops and cattle and all living creatures. For by her waxing and waning, by a certain wonderful contrivance of providence, everything that is born is nourished and grows. Concerning which we could speak more at length and unfold the matter in detail, but that the method of the question proposed recalls us. Yet, by the very same appliances by which they are produced, all things are nourished and increased. But when, from any just cause, the regulation of the appointed order is changed, corruption and distemper arise, so that chastisement may come upon men by the will of God, as we have said above. But perhaps you will say, what of the fact that, in that common chastisement, like things befall the pious and the impious? It is true, and we confess it, but the chastisement turns to the advantage of the pious, that being afflicted in the present life, they may come more purified to the future, in which perpetual rest is prepared for them, and that at the same time even the impious may somewhat profit from their chastisement, or else that the just sentence of the future judgment may be passed upon them. Since in the same chastisements the righteous give thanks to God, while the unrighteous blaspheme. Therefore, since the opinion of things is divided into two parts, that some things are done by order and others against order, it ought, from those things which are done according to order, to be believed that there is a providence. But with respect to those things which are done against order, we should inquire their causes from those who have learned them by prophetic teaching. For those who have become acquainted with prophetic discourse know when and for what reason blight, hail, and pestilence, and such like, have occurred in every generation, and for what sins these have been sent as a punishment, whence causes of sadness, lamentations, and griefs have befallen the human race, whence also trembling sickness has ensued, and that this has been from the beginning the punishment of parricide. For in the beginning of the world there were none of these evils, but they took their rise from the impiety of men, and thence, with the constant increase of iniquities, the number of evils has also increased. But for this reason, divine providence has decreed a judgment with respect to all men, because the present life was not such that everyone could be dealt with according to his deserving. Those things, therefore, which were well and orderly appointed from the beginning, when no causes of evil existed, are not to be judged of from the evils which have befallen the world by reason of the sins of men. In short, as an indication of the things which were from the beginning, some nations are found which are strangers to these evils, for the Ceres, because they live chastely, are kept free from them all. For with them it is unlawful to come at a woman after she has conceived, or while she is being purified. No one there eats unclean flesh, no one knows anything of sacrifices, all are judges to themselves according to justice. For this reason they are not chastened with those plagues which we have spoken of. They live to extreme old age and die without sickness. But we, miserable as we are, dwelling as it were with deadly serpents, I mean with wicked men, necessarily suffer with them the plagues of afflictions in this world, but we cherish hope from the comfort of good things to come.
If even the righteous are tormented on account of the iniquities of others, God ought, as foreseeing this, to have commanded men not to do those things from which it should be necessary that the righteous be afflicted with the unrighteous. Or if they did them, he ought to have applied some correction or purification to the world.
God did so command, and gave precepts by the prophets how men ought to live, but even these precepts they despised. Yea, if any desired to observe them, them they afflicted with various injuries, until they drove them from their purposed observance, and turned them to the rabble of infidelity, and made them like themselves. Wherefore, in short, at the first, when all the earth had been stained with sins, God brought a flood upon the world, which you say happened under Deucalion. And at that time he saved a certain righteous man with his sons in an ark, and with him the race of all plants and animals. And yet even those who sprang from them, after a time, again did deeds like to those of their predecessors. For those things that had befallen them were forgotten, so that their descendants did not even believe that the flood had taken place. Wherefore God also decreed that there should not be another flood in the present world, else there should have been one in every generation, according to the account of their sins by reason of their unbelief. But he rather granted that certain angels who delight in evil should bear sway over the several nations, and to them was given power over individual men, yet only on this condition, if anyone first had made himself subject to them by sinning, until he should come who delights in good, and by him the number of the righteous should be completed, and by the increase of the number of pious men all over the world, impiety should be in some measure repressed, and it should be known to all that is good is done by God. But by the freedom of the will, every man, while he is unbelieving in regard to things to come, by evil deeds runs into evils. And these are the things in the world which seem to be done contrary to order, which owe their existence to unbelief. Therefore the dispensation of divine providence is withal to be admired, which granted to those men in the beginning, walking in the good way of life, to enjoy incorruptible good things. But when they sinned, they gave birth to evil by sin. And to every good thing evil is joined as by a certain covenant of alliance on the part of sin, since indeed the earth has been polluted with human blood, and altars have been lighted to demons, and they have polluted the very air by the filthy smoke of sacrifices. And so at length the elements, being first corrupted, have handed over to men the fault of their corruption, as roots communicate their qualities to the branches and the fruit. Observe therefore in this, as I have said, how justly divine providence comes to the help of things vitiated, that, inasmuch as evils which had derived their origin from sin were associated with the good things of God, he should assign two chiefs to these two departments, and accordingly, to him who rejoices in good, he has appointed the ordering of good things, that he might bring those who believe in him to the faith of his providence. But to him who rejoices in evil, he has given over those things which are done without order and uselessly, from which, of course, the faith of his providence comes into doubt, and thus a just division has been made by a just God. Hence, therefore, it is that whereas the orderly course of the stars produces faith that the world was made by the hand of a designer, on the other hand, the disturbance of the air, the pestilent breeze, the uncontrolled fire of the lightning, cast doubt upon the work of providence. For as we have said, every good thing has its corresponding contrary evil thing joined with it. As hail is opposite to the fertilizing showers, the corruption of mildew is associated with the gentle dew. The whirlwinds of storms are joined with the soft winds, unfruitful trees, with fruitful noxious herbs, with useful wild and destructive animals, with gentle ones. But all these things are arranged by God, because that the choice of men's will has departed from the purpose of good and fallen away to evil. Therefore, this division holds in all the things of the world, and as there are pious men, so there are also impious. As there are prophets, so also there are false prophets. And among the Gentiles, there are philosophers and false philosophers. Also the Arabian nations and many others have imitated the circumcision of the Jews for the service of their impiety. So also the worship of demons is contrary to the divine worship, baptism to baptism, laws to the law, false apostles to apostles, and false teachers to teachers. And hence it is that among the philosophers some assert providence, others deny it, some maintain that there is one God, others that there are more than one. In short, the matter has come to this, that whereas demons are expelled by the word of God, by which it is declared that there is a providence, the magical art for the confirmation of infidelity has found out ways of imitating this by contraries. Thus has been discovered the method of counteracting the poison of serpents by incantations, and the effecting of cures contrary to the word and power of God. The magic art has also found out ministries contrary to the angels of God, placing the calling up of souls and the figments of demons in opposition to these. And not to prolong the discourse by a further enumeration, there is nothing whatever that makes for the belief of providence, which has not something, on the other hand, prepared for unbelief. And therefore they who do not know that division of things think that there is no providence, by reason of those things in the world which are discordant from themselves. But do you, my father, as a wise man, choose from that division the part which preserves order and makes for the belief of providence, and do not only follow that part which runs against order and neutralizes the belief of providence.
Show me a way, my son, by which I may establish in my mind one or other of these two orders, the one of which asserts and the other denies providence.
To one having a right judgment, the decision is easy, for this very thing that you say, order and disorder, may be produced by a contriver, but not by insensible nature. For let us suppose, by way of illustration, that a great mass were torn from a high rock and cast down headlong, and when clashed upon the ground were broken into many pieces. Could it in any way happen that, among that multitude of fragments, there should be found even one which should have any perfect figure and shape?
It is impossible.
But, if there be present a statuary, he can by his skillful hand and reasonable mind form the stone cut from the mountain into whatever figure he pleases.
That is true.
Therefore, when there is not a rational mind, no figure can be formed out of the mass, but when there is a designing mind, there may be both form and deformity. For example, if a workman cuts from the mountain a block to which he wishes to give a form, he must first cut it out unformed and rough. Then, by degrees hammering and hewing it by the rule of his art, he expresses the form which he has conceived in his mind. Thus, therefore, from informity or deformity, by the hand of the workman form is attained, and both proceed from the workman. In like manner, therefore, the things which are done in the world are accomplished by the providence of a contriver, although they may seem not quite orderly. And therefore, because these two ways have been made known to you, and you have heard the divisions of them, flee from the way of unbelief, lest haply it lead you to that prince who delights in evils. But follow the way of faith, that you may come to that king who delights in good men.
But why was that prince made who delights in evil? And from what was he made, or was he not made?
The treatment of that subject belongs to another time, but that you may not go away altogether without an answer to this, I shall give a few hints on this subject also. God, foreseeing all things before the creation of the world, knowing that the men who were to be would some of them indeed incline to good, but others to the opposite, assigned those who should choose the good to his own government and his own care, and called them his peculiar inheritance. But he gave over the government of those who should turn to evil to those angels who, not by their substance but by opposition, were unwilling to remain with God, being corrupted by the vice of envy and pride. Those, therefore, he made worthy princes of worthy subjects, yet he so delivered them over to those angels that they have not the power of doing what they will against them, unless they transgress the bounds assigned to them from the beginning. And this is the bound assigned, that unless one first do the will of the demons have no power over him.
You have stated it excellently, my son. It now remains only that you tell me whence is the substance of evil. For if it was made by God, the evil fruit shows that the root is in fault, for it appears that it also is of an evil nature. But if this substance was co-eternal with God, how can that which was equally unproduced and co-eternal be subject to the other?
It was not always, but neither does it necessarily follow, if it was made by God, that its creator should be thought to be such as is that which has been made by him. For indeed God made the substance of all things. But if a reasonable mind, which has been made by God, do not acquiesce in the laws of its creator, and go beyond the bounds of the temperance prescribed to it, how does this reflect on the creator? Or if there is any reason higher than this, we do not know it, for we cannot know anything perfectly, and especially concerning those things for our ignorance of which we are not to be judged. But those things for which we are to be judged are most easy to be understood, and are dispatched almost in a word. For almost the whole rule of our actions is summed up in this, that what we are unwilling to suffer, we should not do to others. For as you would not be killed, you must beware of killing another, and as you would not have your own marriage violated, you must not defile another's bed. You would not be stolen from, neither must you steal. And every matter of men's actions is comprehended within this rule.
Do not take amiss, my son, what I am going to say. Though your words are powerful, yet they cannot lead me to believe that anything can be done apart from Genesis. For I know that all things have happened to me by the necessity of Genesis, and therefore I cannot be persuaded that either to do well or to do ill is in our power. And if we have not our actions in our power, it cannot be believed that there is a judgment to come, by which either punishments may be inflicted on the evil or rewards bestowed on the good. In short, since I see that you are initiated in this sort of learning, I shall lay before you a few things from the art itself.
If you wish to add anything from that science, my brother Clement will answer you with all care, since he has attended more fully to the science of mathematics. For I can maintain in other ways that our actions are in our own power, but I ought not to presume upon those things which I have not learned.
When Aquila had thus spoken, then I, Clement, said, "Tomorrow, my father, you shall speak as you please, and we will gladly hear you. For I suppose it will also be gratifying to you that you have to do with those who are not ignorant of the science which you profess." When, therefore, it had been settled between the old man and me that on the following day we should hold a discussion on the subject of Genesis, whether all things are done under its influence, or there be anything in us which is not done by Genesis, but by the judgment of the mind. Peter rose up and began to speak to the following effect.
To me, it is exceedingly wonderful that things which can easily be found out, men make difficult by recondite thoughts and words, and those especially who think themselves wise, and who, wishing to comprehend the will of God, treat God as if he were a man, yea, as if he were something less than a man. For no one can know the purpose or mind of a man unless he himself reveal his thoughts, and neither can anyone learn a profession unless he be for a long time instructed by a master. How much more must it be that no one can know the mind or the work of the invisible and incomprehensible God unless he himself send a prophet to declare his purpose and expound the way of his creation, so far as it is lawful for men to learn it? Hence, I think it ridiculous when men judge of the power of God in natural ways and think that this is possible and that impossible to him, or this greater and that less, while they are ignorant of everything, who, being unrighteous men, judge the righteous God, unskilled, judge the contriver, corrupt, judge the incorruptible, creatures, judge the Creator. But I would not have you think that in saying this, I take away the power of judging concerning things, but I give counsel that no one walk through devious places and rush into errors without end. And therefore I advise not only wise men, but indeed all men who have a desire of knowing what is advantageous to them, that they seek after the true prophet. For it is he alone who knows all things, and who knows what and how every man is seeking, for he is within the mind of every one of us. But in those who have no desire of the knowledge of God and his righteousness, he is inoperative. But he works in those who seek after that which is profitable to their souls, and kindles in them the light of knowledge. Wherefore seek him first of all, and if you do not find him, expect not that you shall learn anything from any other. But he is soon found by those who diligently seek him through love of the truth, and whose souls are not taken possession of by wickedness. For he is present with those who desire him in the innocence of their spirits, who bear patiently and draw sighs from the bottom of their hearts through love of the truth. But he deserts malevolent minds, because as a prophet he knows the thoughts of everyone, and therefore let no one think that he can find him by his own wisdom, unless, as we have said, he empty his mind of all wickedness and conceive a pure and faithful desire to know him. For when anyone has so prepared himself, he himself is a prophet, seeing a mind prepared for him, of his own accord offers himself to his knowledge. Therefore, if anyone wishes to learn all things, he cannot do it by discussing them one by one. For being mortal, he shall not be able to trace the counsel of God, and to scan immensity itself. But if, as we have said, he desires to learn all things, let him seek after the true prophet. And when he has found him, let him not treat with him by questions and disputations and arguments. But if he has given any response or pronounced any judgment, it cannot be doubted that this is certain. And therefore before all things, let the true prophet be sought, and his words be laid hold of. In respect to these, this only should be discussed by everyone, that he may satisfy himself if they are truly his prophetic words, that is, if they contain undoubted faith of things to come, if they mark out definite times, if they preserve the order of things, if they do not relate as last those things which are first, nor as first those things which were done last. If they contain nothing subtle, nothing composed by magic art to deceive, or if they have not transferred to themselves things which were revealed to others, and have mixed them with falsehoods. And when, All these things having been discussed by right judgment, it is established that they are prophetic words, so they ought to be at once believed concerning all things on which they have spoken and answered. For let us consider carefully the work of divine providence. For whereas the philosophers have introduced certain subtle and difficult words, so that not even the terms that they use in their discourses can be known and understood by all, God has shown that those who thought themselves word framers are altogether unskillful as respects the knowledge of the truth. For the knowledge of things which is imparted by the true prophet is simple and plain and brief, which those men walking through devious places and through the stony difficulties of words are wholly ignorant of. Therefore, to modest and simple minds, when they see things come to pass which have been foretold, it is enough and more than enough that they may receive most certain knowledge from most certain prescience, and for the rest may be at peace, having received evident knowledge of the truth. For all other things are treated by opinion, in which there can be nothing firm. For what speech is there which may not be contradicted, and what argument is there that may not be overthrown by another argument? And hence it is that by disputation of this sort, men can never come to any end of knowledge and learning, but find the end of their life sooner than the end of their questions. And therefore, since among these philosophers are things uncertain, we must come to the true prophet. Him God the Father wished to be loved by all, and accordingly he has been pleased wholly to extinguish those opinions which have originated with men, and in regard to which there is nothing like certainty, that he, the true prophet, might be the more sought after, and that he whom they had obscured should show to men the way of truth. For on this account also God made the world, and by him the world is filled, whence also he is everywhere near to them who seek him, though he be sought in the remotest ends of the earth. But if anyone seek him not purely, nor holily, nor faithfully, he is indeed within him, because he is everywhere, and is found within the minds of all men. But, as we have said before, he is dormant to the unbelieving, and is held to be absent from those by whom his existence is not believed.
And when Peter had said this, and more to the same effect, concerning the true prophet, he dismissed the crowds. And when he very earnestly entreated the old man to remain with us, he could prevail nothing. But he also departed, to return the next day, as had been agreed upon. And after this, we also, with Peter, went to our lodging, and enjoyed our accustomed food and rest.